Awesome. Well, without further ado, everyone, Tai Fujimura, excited for this session. Floor is yours, bud.
Thank you, Brendan, and thank you everybody for being here. It's so nice to see so many familiar names in the chat. I'm really excited for today's session and to hopefully, give you all some really good actionable information you can use for your institutions to help yourselves grow. So, yes, that was a great introduction. Thank you, Brendan. The Chief Product Officer here at Element. I also used to run a web design business where we did lots of, SEO work on websites using kind of the traditional game plan of SEO. So I know that really well, and it's been really exciting to see the industry grow in the last few years towards GEO, which is now really what you need to focus on if you want to be found online. So I'll start with just a little casual chat poll. How many of you feel like you understand SEO? I see some what is SEO? That is a totally great answer. What is GEO? I love that. Okay, so kind of, sorta SEO familiar is what I'm seeing so far. Some no clue, some yes. Okay, great. This is perfect. And what am I even doing here? Wonderful. Okay. So I'll start there then. So SEO is SEO is the act of setting up a website and a web strategy so that your website shows up highly in search engines. So, if you're a business, when people search for your product, you want to show up number one in Google for that product. As an educational institution, when people search for certain programs in a certain area or online programming or continuing ed programming, you want your content, your programming to show up first so students find you. So that's the traditional SEO world. And in SEO, there's this like well-established suite of techniques that people use to try to improve their position. And GEO is now a new evolution of this, where instead of just looking at search engines, we're looking at large language models. We're looking at AI interfaces like ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity, and we're looking at the way that those sources are speaking when they're talking about you and your institution, or in a B2B context, your brand. So if somebody asks, what are the best MBA programs in Chicago, ChatGPT is going through a process to determine what it's going to say, and you, as an institution, want to be affecting that conversation through your content and your strategy. And that is the goal of the session today, is to show you how to do that. So for those of you who were I have no idea what those terms mean, how does that sound? Does that roughly make sense? SEO and GEO there. All right, I see some makes sense. So our agenda today, what we're going to do is talk through what changed, the differences between GEO and SEO. We're going to look at some techniques that you can use to optimize your website and think about your overall digital strategy. And we're going to do a live audit. So I will ask for a volunteer. If you would like to be the volunteer, please say so in the chat. I can only pick one, unfortunately, but whoever says so first can be our volunteer. And then we'll come away with an action plan, thinking about best practices and where to go from here. Okay, so this is the fundamental shift. So you can see here in the background, two cases. I searched for the top colleges in Philly. And in Google, what you can see on the left is what you're used to seeing in Google when you search for that type of thing. So you'll get a bunch of answers. Typically, there's lists like US News and niche. But then you might have an actual, individual institution like Drexel here, you can see at the bottom. However, when you look in ChatGPT, on the right-hand side here, the example is showing a case where I'm searching, what are the top colleges in Philly? I'm graduating in 2026. And ChatGPT is giving me an answer. And it's going to give me an answer that's kind of a combination of all of the knowledge that it can find about the topic. Now, one really important thing to see here is that the nature of what people are asking is different. So in a search engine, people are going to type in a few words, then they're going to scan the results, then they're going to find a result, they'll click it, they'll go to that website, they'll read that website, they'll come back to the results, look at another result. That's sort of a two-step process where you have search and then discovery. Whereas within AI tools, that search and discovery phase are kind of connected and smushed together. So the user actually just gets a full answer. They don't have to see the results, then go to the results, then come up with the answer themselves. And that's what's so useful about these AI tools. But it means that we, as owners of brands in the higher ed space, we need to be mindful of how people are finding us and how we want to kind of influence or affect that conversation. So you can think of a large language model that's answering questions almost like a consultant or expert that is making recommendations directly to the public. So you may have, it's almost as if someone's asking a friend, what are the top colleges in Philly? It's no longer this process where they're going through that research themselves. They're going to be trusting the expertise of that authority. And that's why this is so critical. So here's a kind of rundown of the traditional research versus the modern research. One stat I pulled from Andreessen Horowitz is that the average Google query is 4 words, whereas the average ChatGPT question is 23 words. So people in ChatGPT are trying to have a conversation. They're trying to really go deep on a topic as opposed to just the surface area. Users can also ask additional questions. This is super different from the traditional research path. And in summary, in the traditional path, the user is doing the research and the search engine kind of helps them. Whereas the modern research approach is that the AI tool itself is doing the research and the user is gaining their understanding from that. So let's look at in more detail what these results are how these results come to be. So in the chat results where you get an answer from a AI tool like ChatGPT, there's actually 2 stages that are going into what it says. So the first stage is that the large language models themselves are actually trained on knowledge of anything that it can find, of the sort of body of all human knowledge, going from, sort of like a summarized version of the internet all the way through the publications and journalism and any other source of information that it can find. And those things are all kind of embedded in the model and its knowledge of the world. And that's one way in which you as an institution can affect how your institution is spoken about and how your niche is spoken about, the sort of programs that you want to be known for. Then there's a second stage, which is that these AI tools actually use search to find results to summarize. So when someone asks a question, they're also going to the internet, looking at a bunch of websites, reading those websites, and consolidating the results. So there's kind of 2 ways that you affect it, whereas with traditional search, it's really a simpler process of just doing that SEO phase. So does that make sense? So when it comes to SEO, you're just kind of like working on your website, the links that are coming to your website. It's a very established method for how you kind of get your website to place highly on this. Whereas it's a little more complicated now in the GEO world. You can affect the model itself, and you can also affect the search rankings with SEO, which allows you to get the best results in that kind of 2-step process that the AI tool is going to do. Yeah, feel free, Gary. I'm just scanning the chat. Any questions? Okay. And feel free to interrupt anytime with questions. I know this is a lot to take in. So another thing to keep in mind is that ChatGPT is not just an answer generator. It does funnel traffic to your website. So you can see in ChatGPT, you get these like little chips, and the chip shows where it's getting its information. So when you get cited in ChatGPT, that's what that's called, the user can actually click on that to go further. And you can see over time, the number of unique domains that are getting traffic from ChatGPT just keeps skyrocketing. So ChatGPT is going to soon become the most important search engine, if not, tied with Google or, whatever. They'll be the most important sources of traffic to your website. So keep that in mind. But in this new world, the role of the website is different. The role of the website is no longer to do the entire process end to end, where the website used to be the first introduction that somebody would have to your school. Then they would continue to visit the website over and over as they go through the process, and then finally they might apply. Now it's more likely that they'll be doing their research in something like ChatGPT. off your website, they're only going to go to your website at the moment where they have like a really specific question or they're actually ready to apply. So your website becomes more about that like down funnel traffic in marketing terms. And yes, all the traffic from ChatGPT does show in your Google Analytics, and it should show with that as the source. So this is something that you want to keep in mind. Okay, this is some data I found from a study that this company did testing different large language models and how they answer questions and where the sources are that influence the things that they say. And you can see here, there's a bunch of important things. Mentions in lists is very important. So ChatGPT tends to trust lists. So when there's a top 10 this or a top 5 that, it'll tend to trust that well. It tends to trust awards, it tends to trust reviews, examples from customers, and social sentiment to some extent. Now, it's worth mentioning that these stats are very preliminary. Anybody who studies this kind of gets a different set of stats, and that's because the large language models don't publish their methodologies for how they do these things. They don't really want people to know. So you kind of have to find out by trying. And it's an opaque type of process. So a lot of the industry is figuring out as it goes, and the AI search tools are also changing all the time. So you never quite know what could work. But so everybody's just kind of figuring it out, but there are some general principles that you can follow, which is what I'm going to share with you today. So keep in mind, like I said, traditional SEO still matters. So there's a couple reasons for that. One is that the AI tools actually use your ranking in Google to determine whether your site is relevant for it to pull information from when it's answering a question. So showing up high in Google is still important because that affects when you get mentioned by ChatGPT. Another reason is that the traditional SEO techniques, which generally boil down to having like a really clean, simple website, not simple, but well-coded website where the code is very simple and straightforward and easy to understand, a website that's really fast, that's really rich and detailed. Those are all of your classic techniques for SEO. Those also apply to GEO. But GEO, you need to go a little bit further. Actually, Brianna, hot off the presses, ChatGPT stopped citing Reddit, I believe. So they just announced that recently. So this is a great example of what I mean. If I gave this talk a month ago, that would have been one of my big recommendations. But since it's not right now, I'm not recommending it. Now that could change, right? They could go back to doing that. They could do it in a different way. Who knows? So it's an evolving space. But what I wanted to emphasize here is you need an SEO optimized website that still remains critical to your strategy, but GEO goes beyond the website and into a more holistic approach to what I'm calling digital PR, which I'll show you more in a moment. So here's a little comparison of the differences. So we used to just think about getting included in search results as high up as possible. Now we're thinking about being mentioned, not just mentioned, but mentioned favorably when a tool is talking about our niche. Another big thing I want to call out here is the field of play. So in the SEO world, you're really focused mostly on your website and the websites that are linking to your website and getting as many of those as possible, which we call backlinks. Whereas in GEO, you're really trying to influence the large language model by any source, whether that's your website or it's some other source. Okay, so I'm going to try to go quickly through some tips here so we have time for our demo. When you're looking at your website, these are some best practices that are definitely going to help with allowing your website to be understood and cited by large language models. So you want to write your content as much as possible in a conversational tone. The reason is that large language models understand full sentences where the concepts are entirely encapsulated in the sentence better than kind of like factoids or things like this that require some interpretation. You want to eliminate any bad content on your website because large language models will see and crawl that content that mattered less in an SEO-driven world that matters a lot now. You want to make sure, especially you don't have any content that's locked away in a PDF or an image on your website. All your content needs to be text. It turns out that adding summaries at the top of your pages is really important. Large language models like that. Another great technique are fact cards, which is I'll show you an example of in a second. Another key thing is to continually name the partners and accreditations and locations that you're referencing. Be careful with the word we. So if you start your about page with we do this and we do that, the large language models may not identify that we means your institution. So you need to actually be a little bit more like verbose in how you describe things to make sure that the model picks it up. Another key thing is what's called schema.org markup, which is a standard for describing web pages to machines. This was useful for SEO. It's even more important for GEO. Versioning is another great technique where when you have web pages, if you write the date of that web page or the date of the last update, that allows large language models to be very confident that the data is fresh. You want to cite and link to authoritative sources. Large language models really react well when there's proof of something. So they see a lot of claims, but when you can actually cite a source that said a certain thing, that is respected by large language models. And detailed content. So in an SEO world, you might have wanted to break up your content a little bit more because there was what was called like a long tail strategy where you'd try to have like lots of content for lots of different kind of fringe topics to show up in all these searches. And that's no longer quite as important. It's more important to have the depth of content on your site instead of kind of thinking about the breadth. Both are still useful, but you want to have as much rich detail as you can. Here are some examples of these patterns. A table of contents, I forgot that in the list, but a table of contents, it turns out, is very helpful for large language models to understand web pages as well. This is an example of that fact block pattern. We have a headline, Nike combines AI with augmented reality. Then we have some paragraphs of text where there's a link to a statistic that is from an authoritative source, which is Nike. So this is a perfect example of optimization for AI to understand this content. FAQs are another big one. Large language models love FAQs. FAQs are actually very similar to the training data that model creators will use to actually teach agents about the world. So it actually works out that it's a really good way to train large language models about who you are. Oh, and thank you, Daniel. So yeah, maybe my knowledge is out of date there. Okay. So another key thing to keep in mind is content corroboration when it comes to GEO. So in an SEO world, like I said, you are focused mostly on your own website. You want to get links to your website. You want to optimize your website. You want your website to show up so someone clicks your website so they get your content. And in GEO, it's a little different because you're never just going to be the only website that's mentioned or the only source that's involved in an answer. So what you're trying to do is almost like digital PR, where you're trying to create a body of information that's out there in the world that influences what the model thinks about the question that's being asked. So you want to go wide. You want to go to any possible source, any place where your institution may be mentioned, and you want to make sure that your message is clear and consistent and proven and backed by evidence in all of those cases. There are a number of tools that you can use to measure this. This is an evolving space, so I don't have a strong recommendation. But one thing that we'll show you in just a second is that you can try this yourself. Search for your niche, search for your types of programs, the things you want to promote in ChatGPT and Perplexity and see what happens. That's the number one way to start getting a sense of where you're at. And then after that, you can try in a more advanced product. And I would take a look at some of these. There is a great tool, which I'll link at the end of this deck, which is HubSpot's AEO Grader. And this is a really easy way that you can actually check a variety of different large language models at once to see how well your brand name shows within the terms that you care about. These are some things not to do. The number one thing is don't get fooled by any sort of claim of a product or an agency that says, we will AI optimize your site. It is simply not that easy. That is not the route to success. The route to success is hard. That's why it's the route to success. Not a lot of people will do it. It's going through this entire process, making sure your site's great and your content is corroborated. Okay, so being mindful of time, I want to jump in with our volunteer. So Brendan, I see that you've had some
I pulled some
candidates.
pulled some
Okay.
candidates. I have some information. So let's go ahead and go with institution. Thanks to Sean for providing this. Taylor University is the institution name.
Okay. And what
Do
what
you need one
yeah, what
program or multiple programs?
give me one program and the location of the school.
Uh, Taylor University is located in, oh man,
Is that you, Sean?
Indiana, Upland,
Upland,
Indiana.
Indiana. Okay. So,
Yep.
and the program, so we're a private Christian university in
MA
Upland.
doctorate in leadership.
Okay. So, I'm looking to attend a Christian university in Indiana. What is the best choice for me? So let's see what it says. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking for the sources that ChatGPT is using to inform its answer, right? So I gave this like very general question. And what you can see here is this is the table of recommendations that it came up with. And we want to get you into this list, right? So what we're looking at are what are the actual websites that ChatGPT is researching when it comes to answering this question. Oh, is my share not
Yeah,
working?
you're sharing the slide deck still.
Oh, sorry. Okay, let me
You're
try.
good.
Okay, are we back?
Yep.
Okay, good. So what I did was I typed in, I'm looking to attend a Christian university in Indiana. What is the best choice for me? Okay. And you can see ChatGPT gave us some information at the top, and then it's showing a list. And this is the list that we want to get you into, right? So that's the act of GEO is kind of helping your school end up within this list. So how you do that is you can kind of reverse engineer what's going into ChatGPT to figure out what's influencing this answer, right? So when we look at the sources here, you can kind of hover over the chips that it's mentioning. And you can see that it's citing Wikipedia, it's citing this findyourchristiancollege.com, it's citing College Simply, online Christian colleges. So a big part of your GEO strategy, first of all, you should optimize your website. Second of all, you should find out who's running these websites and you should build a relationship with them. Because if you can build a relationship with them, you can kind of make the case for your school and try to get onto these lists because these lists seem to be trusted by ChatGPT in this context. Does that make sense? I'm going to try to pull up the chat again. Okay.
We're getting celebrations for Anderson, and Sean says
Okay.
that makes sense.
Nice. Okay. So let's take a look. Let's go a little bit deeper. I want to see if I can actually get it to name you. Okay. So let's start a new chat. And I'll say, tell me which universities are near Upland. It's University, Taylor University, right?
Yeah, Taylor University.
Boom. We got you right there at the top, so that's great. So apparently you are listed on americanschoolsearch.com, which ChatGPT trusts to answer this question. So we're running a little low on time, so I can't go that much deeper than this in this demo. But what I would do if I had more time is also do so ask a bunch more questions. So I'd ask about your key programming. So I'd ask, hey, I'm considering this major or that major, or I'm looking for a school that has these qualities, and see what you're ranking for and see what you're not. and pay attention to those rankings. Another really important one, actually, I'll do this one really quickly. So tell me about Taylor University. Okay. This is a really revealing one because what it's going to do is it's going to kind of spit out all the knowledge that it has about you, whether that is a part of your whether that's a part of its actual model, where that's kind of embedded in the large language model, or it's coming from research. In this case, this is information that's coming from your website. If you see facts in here that aren't correct, that could mean that that could be the AI's fault, but likely these days it's not. Likely these days that means there's some source that you might have that's out there that may be outdated or incorrect. So you'll want to go in and take a look at those things. That could be on your website, could be your Wikipedia, it could be a third party, and so on. And this is where the kind of PR effort begins because you'll see what is mentioned about your institution. If you don't like some of that stuff, you need to kind of follow those breadcrumbs and find out where that information is coming from so that you can influence it. That's not going to happen overnight. Like I said, it's hard work, but that is the critical thing for people, building a higher ed brand in this day and age to control or influence that narrative with all of these techniques that I've mentioned. So let me go back to my presentation just for one more minute here. And I'll close with this. So I threw a lot of information at you, a lot of techniques or things to consider, but you can keep it pretty simple. Keep it pretty simple. First, you need a strong website. You need to adhere to all SEO best practices. You need fresh content. You need to and the one thing I would recommend you do today is get rid of your old or stale content. That's such a big issue for you in the GEO world. Secondly, you need to create and cultivate a robust public conversation about your institution. That means you want people to say positive things about your institution in any possible place that they can. All of that activity will influence what large language models think and what it says when it's asked about you. And one key action item is check your Wikipedia. Make sure that your Wikipedia article is robust and up to date. I bet there's information that you would want people to find there that they can't currently find there. That's a great place to start because Wikipedia is a very trusted source. Then awareness. So the must do, I would say, is just spend an hour with your team, do what I just showed you for 5 minutes, try different queries, see where you're showing up well, where you may have a gap, and start making an action plan based on actual results. Don't worry about the heuristics. Don't worry about the kind of like whatever, like hot tips that people may have. Look at the actual results. Think about what your actual students and prospects are going to be entering into ChatGPT and try it yourself. That's the best way for you to gain an understanding so you can build that strategy for yourself. And with that, I will stop my screen share. Do we have to cut off right now or do we have?
We got one question we can
Okay,
answer. I mean,
great.
it's time. We got the next session coming up
Yeah.
hot, but does it take, whenever they're asking these questions in ChatGPT and others, is it taking geolocation of where the search is happening into consideration, or is it solely based on the prompt that's going in?
I actually am not positive, but I'm pretty sure it would take geolocation into account, especially if it has that in your memory. So it certainly would if it's interacted with you before and you've said things about the place where you live, it'll remember that. So it will bias what it says based on that knowledge.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, everyone, please let's give it up for Ty.